An elite SWAT team received urgent orders. Capture Carlos Mendez, an international drug lord. According to intel, he was hiding at 4588 Oakwood. They mobilized in under 7 minutes. 4 black SUVs tore through a quiet suburban neighborhood, tires screeching across clean pavement like a storm was about to hit. They didn't knock, they didn't double-check the address, just raised weapons and shouted police. Everyone, get on the ground. A 68-year-old man was under a car in his garage changing the oil on an old Buick. A woman had just stepped out of her car, grocery bags in hand. Within 60 seconds, she was tased. He was face down on the driveway, wrists zip-tied behind his back. Then the man spoke, no shouting, no panic, just 5 calm words. Call General Rohr. Right now, the entire SWAT unit froze. The commander frowned. Who the hell is this guy? That was the moment they realized they hadn't just hit the wrong house. They'd messed with the wrong man. Step back, old man, or you're next. That's what one of them said right before they tased my wife. Then they turned their weapons on me. I didn't shout, I didn't run, I simply looked at their commander and said 5 words. Call General Rohr right now. That's when the SWAT team froze. If 5 words can stop trained operatives in their tracks, that's called respect. Respect for those who never stop serving. The neighbors on Oakwood Drive knew Roy Tanner as the guy who could fix anything with an engine. Most weekends, his garage door stood open, classic rock spilling out alongside the rhythmic clinks of his tools. At 68, Roy's hands weren't as steady as they used to be, but they still remembered every mechanical puzzle they'd ever solved. What most people didn't know was his past 27 years of service, unnamed missions in unacknowledged countries. Medals kept in a shoebox, not on display. Roy preferred it that way. He wanted to be known for fixing carburetors, not navigating classified operations. Only Linda knew everything. She stayed through the nightmares, through the scars, both the ones you could see and the ones you couldn't. Their 43 years of marriage had survived deployment, silence, and the slow, painful process of becoming a civilian again. Their modest ranch-style home became a refuge. Roy spent Thursdays volunteering at the VFW. Saturdays building ramps for disabled veterans. Tuesdays, he taught auto shop to kids no one else had patience for. That Wednesday had started unremarkably. Roy was under Mrs. Henderson's old Buick, changing the oil as a favor. Linda had gone grocery shopping senior discount day at Pammer's Market. The first crisp hints of fall were in the air. Then came the screech of tires, too aggressive, too intentional for their quiet street. Roy rolled out just in time to see a black SUV block his driveway. Then 3 more pulled in behind it. Men in tactical gear poured out weapons, raised voices shouting, "Police, everyone on the ground!" Roy stood up slowly, hands raised, fingers still stained with grease. "There's some mistake," he started. A rifle barrel shut him up. "Down now," he complied. Face pressed to concrete, boots surrounded him. He heard the zip ties cinch tight around his wrists. Then another voice, "Secure the house." That's when Linda pulled into the driveway, grocery bags in hand. She stepped out, eyes wide with confusion. "Roy, what's happening?" 3 officers immediately turned their weapons on her. "Drop the bags, hands where we can see them." She froze, clutching the bags to her chest. "Please, I'm just—" "She's not complying," a young officer yelled, voice tight with adrenaline. "Ma'am, final warning." Linda tried to lower the bags, but her arthritic hands didn't move fast enough. "Non-compliant subject." The young officer stepped forward, taser drawn. Roy's voice cut through the chaos. "She's my wife. She's just carrying groceries." A boot pressed harder into his back. "Step back, old man, or you're next." Then came the crackle of the taser. Linda's body convulsed. The bags burst across the driveway. Eggs shattered, apples rolled, milk splashed. She collapsed like a marionette with its strings cut. Roy didn't panic, didn't scream, with the discipline of a life lived in shadows. He focused. "Let me up," he told the commander, calm, firm. The man hesitated, then nodded. Roy Rowe's wrists still bound and looked him in the eye. 5 words, steady and sharp. "Call General Rohr right now." The commander blinked, confused. The SWAT team stayed frozen. Weapons trained, radio still buzzing. A younger officer scoffed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "We're serving a warrant for Carlos Mendez. High-level drug trafficker. Save the name dropping." Roy didn't flinch. "This is 4588 Oakwood Drive. You want 4588 Oakwood Avenue. Different zip code entirely." His voice didn't shake, even though Linda lay motionless behind him. "Now cut these restraints and call General James Rorick at Central Command. Sir, I need to attend to my wife. She has a heart condition. The commander's posture changed. Doubt crept in. Check the address, he barked at one of his men. As they verified, Roy spoke again. Left inside pocket of my jacket. Look, don't touch. The commander reached in with gloved hands. He pulled out a worn metallic badge, a Black Eagle insignia, unmistakable to anyone with military intelligence background. Black protocol clearance, Roy said softly. The street fell silent. Even the radios paused. One older SWAT member leaned toward the commander and whispered, Sir, that's not just military. That's Tier 1 classified. That's RU. The commander's entire demeanor shifted in an instant. Get the medic over here now, he barked. Cut his restraints. Roy dropped to his knees beside Linda, checking her pulse with practiced, steady fingers. The operation fell apart around him. Officers scrambled, one thumbing through his phone to verify Roy's identity, another dispatching to confirm the address discrepancy. You hit the wrong house, Roy said evenly, helping Linda into a sitting position just as the medic arrived. You didn't verify, you escalated without cause, and you used excessive force on a senior citizen carrying groceries. Across the street, a neighbor had caught the whole scene on video. Later, he'd tell the news. He just said 5 words and the entire SWAT team froze like someone flipped a switch. The SWAT commander removed his helmet, revealing a face drained of color. Sir, we had intel that... You had adrenaline, Roy interrupted. His voice was calm but sharp enough to make the officer flinch. Adrenaline and authority, but no accountability. Linda's eyes flickered open, dazed, hurting. Roy, she breathed. I'm here, he said softly. Then to the commander, I'm taking my wife inside. Your team will stay outside and you'll call General Rohr immediately. The young officer who had fired the taser stood paralyzed. Shame had gripped him like gravity. As Roy helped Linda toward the house, another officer quietly gathered the scattered groceries, a silent, futile gesture of apology. Whispers rippled through the team. Database searches had confirmed it. Roy's name appeared on lists they weren't supposed to know existed. Not just military, Tier 1 ghost level. They had come looking for a drug dealer. Instead, they tased the wife of a man whose past was classified above their clearance. 40 minutes later, inside the Tanner home, Linda lay resting on the couch with an ice pack pressed to her chest. Roy sat beside her, never letting go of her hand, his eyes flicking to the driveway through parted curtains. The SWAT team hadn't moved. Their confidence had evaporated. 2 officers had been redirected to the correct address only to discover their suspect had moved months ago. The command vehicle's radio now buzzed, not with orders, but with damage control. Then a black SUV with military plates pulled up. No sirens, no lights, just a deliberate stop. A man stepped out. No uniform, just a tailored charcoal suit. He didn't need insignia to project power. General James Rohr. At 62, silver-haired and straight-backed, he carried the presence of a man who had stared down wars and walked out standing. He ignored the SWAT commander and walked straight toward the house. Roy met him at the door. For a moment, neither spoke. Years of shared history hung in the silence. Then, with crisp precision, Rohr raised his hand in salute. Roy returned it, his first salute in 15 years. They told me you were dead, Rohr said at last. Only professionally, Roy replied. Rohr glanced past him, his jaw clenching as he saw Linda. Then he turned to the SWAT team. His voice carried like a thunderclap without needing to rise. This man, he said, pointing to Roy, wrote the protocols. You just broke. Silence. One officer, the older one who had recognized the badge, suddenly paled. Tanner, he whispered. R.J. Tanner. You wrote the civilian engagement handbook. Roy nodded. No pride, just fact. Rohr's gaze locked on the SWAT commander. You didn't detain a suspect today. You humiliated a national asset, a man whose operational experience likely exceeds your entire team's combined. The commander tried to reply. Rohr didn't let him. The officer who deployed a taser without a clear threat assessment. Where is he? The young man stepped forward, visibly trembling. Your gear now, no protest. The young officer removed his vest sidearm badge, placing them gently on the hood of the nearest cruiser. You're relieved. Report to your captain for administrative reassignment. No one spoke as he walked away, sat inside a patrol car and stared blankly ahead. Career over. Rohr turned back to Roy. From inside his jacket, he pulled out a sealed envelope. This contains 2 things, he said quietly. A formal apology and reinstatement of your clearances. We need you back, Roy. The world hasn't gotten any safer. Roy looked at the envelope, but didn't take it. The world never changes. James, he said quietly. Just the uniforms and the weapons. Then he turned back toward Linda, who watched from the doorway, eyes full of love, pain, and pride. My service is to her now, Roy said, glancing back at the house, and to the people who need their cars fixed, not tactical solutions? Roy nodded understanding in his eyes. He placed the envelope gently on the porch railing. The offer stands, he said quietly, then turned and walked away. Roy never opened the envelope. Some offers didn't require consideration to be answered. A week later, Police Chief Michael Brennan held a press conference, flanked by American flags standing behind a solemn podium. He announced a new department-wide initiative, the 5 Words Protocol. It was a mandatory training program centered on de-escalation, proper identification procedures, and respect for the dignity of civilians. He never mentioned Roy or Linda by name. He didn't need to. The video had gone viral, despite attempts to suppress it, and the community knew exactly why reform had suddenly become urgent. Linda recovered slowly. The taser hadn't worsened her heart condition, thankfully, but deep, dark bruises bloomed across her chest where the barbs had struck. She never spoke about the pain, neither the physical ache, nor the quiet humiliation of being treated as a threat on her own front lawn, but something changed in her. She stood a little taller, met the eyes of police officers at the grocery store, refused to shrink under the memory of what had happened. Roy resumed his routines. Mrs. Henderson's Buick got its oil change. The VFW still welcomed him on Thursdays. High school students still gathered in his auto shop where second chances were passed down with socket wrenches and quiet wisdom. But the neighborhood noticed what had shifted. Every patrol car slowed just slightly when passing the Tanner driveway. Officers were the first to nod when they passed Roy on his morning walks. An unmarked black SUV would occasionally appear, leaving small packages on the porch. Books, bottles of fine whiskey. Once a restored photo of a younger Roy flanked by men whose faces were carefully blurred. 3 months later, a rookie officer's cruiser broke down a few doors down from Roy's home. Before the young man even reached for his radio, Roy was already walking over, tools in hand. They worked under the hood together in silence. Finally, the young officer spoke, hesitant. "Sir, everyone at the academy talks about you now, about what happened. They say, you could have ended careers that day with one phone call. Why didn't you?" Roy tightened a bolt before answering. "Because revenge doesn't fix engines," he said, "and it doesn't fix people either." The cruiser roared to life on the first try. The officer stood in quiet respect. "Thank you, sir." "Roy," he corrected, "just Roy." Later that week, a reporter ambushed him outside the VFW. Microphone shoved toward his face, voice sharp. "Mr. Tanner, why didn't you fight back when they attacked your wife? You had the training, you had the right. Why just 5 words instead of action?" Roy looked into the camera. His expression was calm, not proud, not angry. "Because 5 words were louder than fear," he said. "And sometimes the strongest position isn't the one where you're standing over someone else. It's the one where you're standing your ground." Then he turned and walked back to his truck, back to the life he'd chosen, a life that would never make headlines or hang medals in glass cases. Just a man who fixed things, a man who understood that real strength doesn't need to shout, a man who had once been a weapon and who now chose every day to be a builder instead. Subscribe to New Day's story. If you believe some men don't need rank or titles, just 5 words and the truth behind them.